A dragon sat by the bus stop so nobody waited alone, until one night he ended up alone. The last rays of sunlight painted the sky orange and purple as Vexthar settled his massive bronze body onto the concrete beside bus stop 12. His scales caught the fading light, making him look like an ancient statue carved from metal. He had been doing this same thing every evening for 15 years, and his body knew exactly how to fold his wings and curl his tail so he fit perfectly in the small space. The bus stop sat on the edge of the industrial district, where the streetlights took longer to turn on, and the shadows grew deeper faster than other parts of the city. Most aliens avoided this area after dark, but humans seemed to work all hours, and someone always needed this particular bus route home. Danny Morrison was the first to arrive that evening. He carried a metal lunch box covered in dents and walked with the tired shuffle of someone who had spent 12 hours on his feet. When he saw Vexthar, his face relaxed into a smile. "Hey there, big guy," Danny said, dropping onto the bench with a grateful sigh. "Another long one today." The machines were difficult again. Turned out to be a loose wire smaller than my pinky finger. He had learned perfect English over the decades, though his accent still carried the rolling sounds of his native tongue. Danny unwrapped the sandwich and offered half to the dragon. This too was part of their routine. Vexthar accepted it with careful claws, taking small bites that seemed almost comical for a creature his size. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened further. The streetlights finally flickered to life, casting yellow pools on the cracked sidewalk. In the distance, factory machines hummed and clanked, the heartbeat of the industrial zone. Lisa Grant arrived next, her nurse uniform still crisp despite the long day behind her. She carried a thermos and 2 cups. "Evening, gentlemen," she said, settling on the other side of the bench. She poured hot coffee into both cups and handed one to Danny. For Vexthar, she pulled out a different container, this one filled with warm broth made from vegetables and spices. "You remembered the pepper flakes," Vexthar observed, his eyes brightening as he accepted the offering. "Of course I did. You mentioned last week that your people add them to everything." Lisa sipped her coffee and closed her eyes briefly. 12-hour shift. "I swear my feet are going to fall off." His mother cried happy tears for 20 minutes straight. A cool breeze carried the smell of oil and metal from the factories, mixed with the sweeter scent of food vendors closing their stalls several blocks away. Kevin Hughes rushed up just as the first bus appeared in the distance, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. The college student looked frantic, his hair sticking up in different directions. "Made it," he gasped, bending over to catch his breath. "Professor Chen kept us late again." "I swear that man has no concept of time. Did you know that Zentari have 3 different types of blood cells, while we only have 2? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have assumed." The approaching bus grew louder, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Lisa reached over and placed her hand on Vexthar's forearm, her fingers tiny against his scaled limb. "We're glad you're here with us now." "That's what I like to hear, you coming, Lisa." The bus pulled away, leaving the dragon alone at the stop once more. But he didn't leave immediately. He stayed for another hour, watching as 2 more buses came and went, greeting each passenger who waited, sharing quiet words and warm presents. A teenager named Amanda Walsh took the last bus. She had been crying, her eyes red and swollen. Vexthar didn't ask what was wrong. He simply sat with her, his massive presence a shield against the dark and the loneliness. Sometimes silence was the greatest gift. When the final bus disappeared around the corner, Vexthar finally stood. His joints creaked slightly, a reminder that he was growing old even by his species' long standards. He stretched his wings, careful not to knock over the small bench, and began his walk home through the empty streets. Behind him, bus stop 12 stood quiet and dark. Tomorrow, he would return at sunset, just as he had for 15 years. Nobody would wait alone while he still had strength to sit and watch. This was his purpose, his way of fighting back against the loneliness that had nearly destroyed him after the war. He didn't know that tomorrow would be different. He couldn't know that soon. He would be the one waiting alone in the dark. The next evening, Danny arrived at bus stop 12 at his usual time. The sun was setting in the same orange and purple pattern it always did, painting the industrial district in familiar colors. But something felt wrong immediately. The space beside the bench where Vexthar always sat was empty. Danny checked his watch. He was right on time, maybe even a minute late. Vexthar was never late. In 15 years, according to the stories Danny had heard, the old dragon had missed this spot maybe 3 times, and each time he had sent word ahead. Weird, Danny muttered, settling onto the bench alone. The concrete felt colder without the warmth that radiated from Vexthar's bronze scales. Claire Peterson arrived 5 minutes later, carrying her usual offering of coffee in a travel mug. She looked around with a confused expression. "Where's Vex?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. "Don't know. He wasn't here when I showed up." Danny stood and walked around the bus stop, as if the massive dragon might somehow be hiding behind the small shelter. "That's not like him." Claire pulled out her comm device and tapped the screen. "I'm calling him." Lisa arrived next, already looking concerned before she even reached the stop. "Please tell me I'm just early and Vex is running late." "And he's not answering." "Where's our dragon?" "I want to give him more time." The bus pulled away, leaving Danny and Claire alone at the stop. The shadows grew longer and the streetlights buzzed to life overhead. Kevin came running up, his backpack bouncing. When he saw the empty space, he stopped short. "Oh no, where is he?" And not answering his comm. The address was in the delivery confirmation. Kevin's fingers flew across the screen. "Got it. Building 72 in the old quarter, about 15 minutes from here by foot." "Let's go." Building 72 was a squat concrete structure with narrow windows. The main door was unlocked, as most buildings in the safe colony were. They climbed to the 3rd floor and found apartment 14. Danny knocked hard on the metal door. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. "Vexthar, it's Danny, Claire, and Kevin. We're worried about you." "I don't hear anything inside." She looked them over with sharp eyes. "You friends of the big bronze fellow." He was out the door with a small bag in under 5 minutes. The woman crossed her arms. Looked upset, worried maybe, or scared. He said something about the spaceport and needing the first available transport. She paused, thinking. He also said a name, Ashfall, I think, said it twice. "A memorial site." Kevin's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's where one of the biggest battles of the Frontier War happened. Thousands died there." But he had never given details, never said where or when. "We need to find out if he really went there," Claire said, already heading for the stairs. They made their way to the colony's small spaceport, a journey that took them another 20 minutes by transit. The port was quiet at this hour, with only a few passenger ships docked. Danny went straight to the main desk, where a bored-looking clerk was reading something on a screen. "Excuse me," Danny said, slightly out of breath. "We're looking for someone who might have caught a transport this morning. Big dragon, bronze scales, probably heading to Ashfall." "Privacy rules." "What if we just wanted to know the schedule for Ashfall transports? That's public information, right?" "Next one isn't until Friday." Danny turned away from the desk, his hands clenched into fists. "He's gone. He went to Ashfall alone." Or maybe someone had posted about Vexthar's disappearance on the local community board, and word was spreading fast. "Is it true?" she asked, tears already forming in her eyes. "Is Vex really gone?" "I don't know how yet, but we're going to bring him home." The very thing he had spent 15 years making sure no one else had to be. By the next morning, word about Vexthar had spread through the entire industrial district. Workers whispered about it in factory break rooms. Bus drivers mentioned it to their passengers. The community board was filled with worried messages from people who had met the gentle dragon over the years. Danny sat in a small cafe near the spaceport, staring at a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. Claire was on her comm device, making her 5th call of the morning. Kevin had his tablet open, scrolling through transport schedules and pricing. "This is impossible," Kevin said, rubbing his eyes. "A commercial ticket to Ashfall costs more than I make in 3 months. And that's just one way. None of them have runs to Ashfall scheduled anytime soon." "You're the folks looking for transport to Ashfall?" she asked, walking over without waiting for an invitation. Danny sat up straighter. "Who's asking?" "Word around the port is you're trying to get to that memorial moon." She pulled out a chair and sat down. "Mind if I ask why?" Helen listened without interrupting, her expression growing more thoughtful as the story continued. "So he's been sitting at that bus stop every night for 15 years?" Helen asked when Claire finished. "Making sure nobody waits alone in the dark." My daughter took that bus route for 2 years when she was working at the medical center. She mentioned a kind dragon who always had encouraging words when her shifts were rough. She looked up at them. Small girl always talked too fast when she was nervous. Accident at the medical center. I've been running cargo to forget mostly. She cleared her throat. Point is, if that dragon was kind to my Katie, then I owe him. I've got a cargo run that passes near Ashfall. I can get you there. No charge. Consider it a thank you for watching over my daughter when I couldn't. Helen stood up. But I'm leaving tomorrow at dawn. Can you be ready? Someone needed to actually investigate what had happened, to find information about Ashfall and why Vexthar would go there. I know someone, Claire said slowly. My uncle, Frank Douglas, he used to be a detective before he retired. If anyone can dig up information, it's him. That's going back about 50 years. Brutal battle, lots of casualties from multiple species. He made some notes. Your dragon friend goes there every year. This time it's been 5. I still have contacts in records and archives. I heard about your search, Nicole said. This is exactly the kind of story people need to hear. Would you be willing to let me help? If I run a piece about him, about what he's done for this community, maybe someone knows something useful. Maybe someone saw him at the spaceport, or knows more about Ashfall, or has connections we don't. War archives and memorial databases. A being who spent 15 years making sure strangers didn't feel alone, now alone himself on a memorial moon. That matters. Within hours, she had found transport logs, memorial site records, and historical documentation about the Battle of Ashfall. Frank returned that evening with a folder full of printouts. Found something interesting. Vexthar has been making an annual pilgrimage to Ashfall for the past 23 years. Always the same time of year, always alone, always returns within 48 hours. The day the fighting ended, Frank spread out several documents on the table. According to memorial records, there are 3 names listed under Vexthar's family registration at the site. His mate and 2 children, one biological and one adopted. Why didn't he ever tell us? Claire whispered. Maybe the pain was too deep, Danny said quietly. Maybe sitting at that bus stop helping others was the only way he could cope. This year marks 50 years since the battle. The memorial site is holding a special ceremony, and they're planning to seal the monument afterward. This would be the last time anyone could visit. If Vexthar went to say goodbye, if he thought his purpose at the bus stop was finished, if the grief of 50 years finally became too much to bear. We need to leave now, Danny said, standing abruptly. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Be at Bay 7 in 2 hours. Bring whatever supplies you need for cold weather. Ashfall is freezing this time of year. You'll need someone to document this. And besides, I want to meet this dragon who means so much to so many people. We heard you're going after Vex, Amanda said. We want to help. We can pool money for supplies, contact more people, spread the word. To keep searching for information, to coordinate things, to let everyone know what's happening. Messages of encouragement flooded their comm devices. People they had never met sent money for supplies. The entire community was mobilizing. Helen Murray stood at the cargo ramp of the Dancing Crow, a mid-sized transport ship that had seen better days but looked solid and reliable. Welcome aboard, she said. Let's go find your friend. Somewhere down there, bus stop 12 sat empty in the darkness. They were coming, Vex. They were coming to make sure he didn't wait alone. The Dancing Crow cut through the darkness of space for 2 days before Ashfall came into view. The moon looked exactly like its name suggested, a gray sphere covered in ash and dust, circling a distant planet that gleamed blue and green in the starlight. Helen brought the ship down carefully through the thin atmosphere, her hands steady on the controls. Memorial site is on the northern continent, she said, checking her instruments. There's a small landing pad and a facility for visitors. Doesn't look like many ships here right now. Everything was gray, from the ash-covered ground to the cloudy sky. A few scattered buildings marked the memorial site, simple structures built from dark stone. In the center stood a massive wall, perhaps 20 meters high, covered in names carved into black marble. The ship touched down with a gentle bump. Helen kept the engines running. I'll stay with the Crow. You folks bundle up, it's cold out there. The air was thin and dry, carrying the smell of old smoke and minerals. Wind whistled across the empty landscape, stirring up small clouds of ash. "Spread out and search," Frank suggested, his detective instincts taking over. "But stay in sight of each other. This place is dangerous if you get lost." Stone benches sat at intervals, and a few wilted flowers lay frozen in the perpetual cold. Kevin found the first clue near the eastern edge of the memorial. "Here, dragon tracks in the ash." They led away from the main memorial toward a cluster of smaller stones. Claire knelt beside the tracks, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "These are fresh, maybe a day old, no more." The tracks wandered, sometimes circling back on themselves, as if Vexthar had been walking without purpose or direction. After 20 minutes of searching, Nicole stopped and pointed. "There." Against those rocks. Danny ran forward, his heart pounding. "Vex, Vex, can you hear me?" "He's alive," Frank said, checking for a pulse along Vexthar's neck. "But barely. He's suffering from exposure, probably dehydration too. How long has he been out here?" "We need to get his temperature up slowly." Nicole stood watch, her recording device forgotten in her pocket. As they worked, Vexthar's eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused at first, confused, but then they settled on Danny's face. "No," Vexthar whispered, his voice rough and broken. "You should not be here. This place is for endings. They rest here in this ash and stone." The names carved there were in his native language, but beneath each was a translation. "Lyra, my mate; Kessa, my daughter; Thorn, my son." His voice cracked on each name. "The war took them in a single moment, a missile strike on a civilian shelter. They said it was an accident, a mistake in coordinates. But this year, I knew it would be the last time. But my body grows weak. Soon I will not be able to sit through the long evenings." Vexthar's breathing was labored. "I came to say goodbye to my family and to wait here with them. It seemed right to end where they ended. I am just an old dragon who sits at a bus stop." As they carefully helped Vexthar drink, Danny took out his comm device. "Look at this," he said, showing Vexthar the screen. "These are messages from people back home. There are hundreds of them. People he had spoken with at the bus stop, people who had seen him there over the years, people whose lives had been changed by a few kind words on a dark evening." One message read, "Vex talked me out of quitting my job when I felt like a failure. I'm a supervisor now. He somehow knew, and he stayed with me for hours, just talking about small things until the crisis passed. He saved my life. You changed everything. I did not know it mattered so much. We'll take turns sitting with you. You spent 15 years making sure none of us were alone. Now it's our turn to make sure you're not alone either. We're your family now." "A family," he repeated softly, looking at the faces gathered around him. "Yes, perhaps that is what we are." Danny and Frank supported him on one side while Claire and Kevin took the other. Nicole walked ahead, clearing obstacles from their path and calling directions back to Helen at the ship. Before they left the memorial site, Vexthar asked them to stop one more time at the 3 small stones. He knelt in the ash, his body trembling from cold and exhaustion, and placed one claw on each marker. "I am not saying goodbye forever," he told his lost family, his voice thick with emotion. "But I am saying goodbye to the guilt. For 50 years I have carried the weight of surviving when you did not. I thought making sure others never felt alone would somehow balance the scales, but these people have shown me something important." He paused, gathering strength. "They have shown me that the best way to honor your memory is not to join you in death, but to keep living, to keep caring, to keep being part of the world. I hope you understand." It was designed for humans, so the dragon had to curl awkwardly to fit, but the heated air and warm blankets began working immediately. She administered fluids through an IV while Claire monitored his vital signs. "He's stabilizing," Claire reported after an hour. "But he needs real medical care when we get home. They'll have a team ready when we land." It felt like honoring them by choosing life. The 2-day journey home gave everyone time to rest and talk. Vexthar told them stories about Lyra, Kessa, and Thorn. How Lyra had been a teacher who could make anyone laugh. How Kessa loved to paint pictures of stars she had never seen. How young Thorn, the adopted human child, had been fascinated by machines and wanted to build spaceships when he grew up. "Thorn was only 8 years old," Vexthar said, his voice distant with memory. "He used to sit on my shoulder and tell me about all the places we would visit together when he was older. He never got the chance. They all were. Vexthar looked at the humans gathered around him in the ship's common area. I see pieces of them in all of you. Kessa's kindness in Claire, Thorne's curiosity in Kevin, Lyra's strength in you, Danny. Perhaps that is why I was drawn to that bus stop, to those particular people. I was looking for my family in the faces of strangers. Maybe not the family you lost, but a family just the same. People across the colony will want to know about you. How do you feel about that? I simply want to continue doing what I have always done, for as long as I am able. Different volunteers sitting with you at the bus stop, helping you stay warm, sharing the work of greeting passengers. My cargo runs keep me away for weeks at a time, but when I'm home, I'd be honored to sit with you. We'd make sure someone was always there with you, and you'd never have to carry the burden alone. You've been doing it for us for 15 years. It's our turn now. Hundreds of people stood on the landing pad, holding signs and flowers and candles. The medical team rushed aboard immediately, but they found Vexthar sitting up, looking stronger than he had in days. The colony's chief physician, a woman named Dr. Patricia Scott, examined him thoroughly. "Remarkable recovery," she said, checking his vital signs. "Though I still want you in the hospital for observation for at least 2 days. They wanted to welcome you home." Amanda Walsh stood at the front, tears streaming down her face. The medical team loaded Vexthar onto a specialized transport platform, but before they took him to the hospital, he asked them to make one stop. Bus stop 12 looked exactly as it always had, a simple bench and shelter on the edge of the industrial district. But now it was decorated with flowers, notes, and small gifts. Someone had hung strings of lights around the shelter, turning the lonely stop into something warm and welcoming. And there, newly installed beside the bench, was a bronze plaque. Vexthar leaned forward to read the inscription. "Dedicated to Vexthar, who taught us that the smallest acts of kindness create the strongest bonds of family. May we all follow his example." The weight of 50 years of grief, of loneliness, of trying to fill an unfillable void, seemed to lift from his shoulders all at once. Mayor Patricia Scott stepped forward from the crowd. She had worked with the community to arrange everything. "Vexthar, this community wants to make you an official promise. From now on, you will never sit at this bus stop alone. We've already had over 200 people sign up to take shifts with you. And on nights when you need to rest, when your strength requires it, others will take your place. Your mission of making sure nobody waits alone will continue, because you've inspired all of us to care for each other the way you've cared for us. Donations are already pouring in to create similar welcoming spaces at other lonely stops throughout the colony. Your kindness is spreading, Vex. Everyone's asking when you'll be back at the bus stop," Danny said, pouring the warm liquid into a cup. "But I told them you need time to heal first. That bench has been my purpose for so long. I do not know who I am without it. I went to Ashfall planning to die with my memories, but you all reminded me that memories are meant to be honored by living, not by giving up. Lyra would have scolded me terribly for my foolishness. She used to say that family is not just the people you are born to, but the people who choose to stand beside you when the universe grows dark. I finally understand what she meant." When he arrived at sunset, he found he was not alone. Claire sat on the bench, saving a spot for him. Kevin stood nearby with hot drinks. Lisa had come even though she was off shift. Frank and Nicole were there too, along with a dozen other people. As Vexthar settled into his familiar spot, the first bus of the evening approached. Gregory Palmer opened the door and grinned. "Good to see you back where you belong, Vex," the driver called out. "Good to be back," Vexthar replied, and he meant it. The passengers came and went as darkness fell, and Vexthar greeted each one. But now he had help. Claire handed out warm drinks. Kevin answered questions about bus schedules. Danny made sure everyone felt welcome. The old dragon watched his human friends work and felt something he had not felt in 50 years. Not just purpose, but joy. Not just duty, but love. As the last bus pulled away and the stars emerged overhead, Vexthar looked at the small group still gathered around him. His family, chosen not by blood but by the quiet miracle of shared kindness on dark evenings. "Thank you," he said softly, "for reminding me that nobody should wait alone. Not even me."